I remember when I was in middle school, my maths teacher had a ton of Nintendo Power magazines that we could read after we'd finished our work. There were magazines from across the 2000s in there, but the one that stuck with me since all the way back then was the very final issue of Nintendo Power, where they covered New Super Mario Bros. U. I must be more emotional than I remember, because it was a very bittersweet read. Something that had been around for decades before I was even born had ended when I was so young. It was one of my first feelings of like, wow, I missed out on something pretty cool. It was a big emotion for me to feel at that age, and over something like a fucking video game magazine. And it looks like they've come back to haunt me, because while it wasn't quite that same bittersweet feelings, I found some old magazines that make me feel like a kid again. Hello, I am Goose, but some of you, most of you, know me as the Punch-Out guy, and call me such in the comments of videos and my Discord server, including videos completely unrelated to Punch-Out, which is warranted. I've made a lot of Punch-Out stuff, from discussion videos to reviews of the game, art of several characters of the games, and the themes. So many Punch-Out themes. As much as I've wanted to branch out from my niche beginnings in that community and become a more general channel, I keep finding stuff I want to talk about, and it always sparks that little creativity nerve in my brain. Which brings me to today's topic. This is a Game Informer magazine from 2009. I got a big box of Game Informer magazines ranging from 2004 to 2011 from an estate sale. It was such a novel purchase, and I got a whole box for $5. I couldn't say no. Unfortunately, they don't make Game Informer magazines anymore, except they do because I wrote this script before the Game Informer revival, but this isn't about their history or whatever. This is about this specific issue. There's a lot of fun stuff in here that really shows you what the gaming sphere was like back then. There's a segment of this issue that talks about Nintendo's up-and-coming console, the DSi, a few pages about Assassin's Creed 2, The Sims 3, a list of best-selling games from 2009, which is a fascinating thing to look at in itself. Hell, there's a Jamster ad. It was a completely different planet. Our main focus today, however, is going to be this little segment in the top left corner of the cover. What's that? A 6-page exclusive article about the upcoming Wii game Punch-Out? Don't mind if I do! Page 46 to page 51 of this magazine is chock full of lovely art, very old-looking screenshots of the game, and a lot of interesting dialogue I haven't seen anywhere else. Literally, I searched for the words in this article online, and even reversed image searched all 6 pages, but didn't find anything related to it. I wouldn't be making this video if not for the fact that this magazine exclusive is not anywhere else on the internet, to my knowledge. I'm a big supporter of preservation, especially these already deteriorating copies of Game Informer, so it was a no-brainer to get these online somehow. Plus, I don't think Game Informer will be too mad at me, right? Hopefully, I hope not. But enough about them. Let's go over all the pages together, with some of my thoughts and comments sprinkled in throughout. We start our short journey on the first 2 pages, which is a double-page spread of Little Mac and a handful of opponents from the game. The text reads, "The champ returns, halting Bald Bull's charge, jogging in a pink sweatsuit in front of the Statue of Liberty, and unleashing a star punch for the big KO." Most old-school gamers still remember these signature moments from the original Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Some even recall the boxer's exact patterns. It's been 15 years since the only follow-up, Super Punch-Out, was released, but this summer, Little Mac is finally staging his comeback. Finding a balance between modern graphics and a classic vibe, Punch-Out tries to capture the essence of the beloved series without feeling antiquated. We laced up our gloves and spent some extended time trading blows with several old rivals, and one new challenger in this long-awaited return to the ring. Already we come across some interesting things to discuss. First, it really puts it into perspective how long it's been since the last Punch-Out game and the one that was about to come out. 15 years! Video games had changed so much in that short time. And now, the time between Punch-Out for the Wii and the present day is longer than the time between Super Punch-Out and Punch-Out for the Wii. That is absurd! God, I love the passage of time! I think the only other detail worth mentioning is the art underneath the text. It shows renders of some of the boxers in the game, but Don Flamenco's in particular is different. It's of his title defense design. Unlike the rest of the boxers featured on this page who use their default renders. Not sure what the reasoning behind that choice was. Moving on to the third and fourth page, which has the first half of text on the far left, with images from the game scattered haphazardly all over the page. It's really neat stuff. I love the way all of these pages are composed. It makes me wish I had looked into magazines more when I was younger. Anyways, have a listen. As soon as Punch-Out was announced for Wii, fans' first question was aimed squarely at the controls. Yes, you can hold the remote sideways and box NES style, and yes, it feels fantastic. We were instantly back in the rhythm of dodging, ducking, and working the face and body with alternating button taps. Almost nothing was changed in the basic gameplay mechanic. Max still turns a tired shade of pink when too many punches are blocked, and he still racks up stars with surprise hits. The only noticeable tweak in the system is that the 3-star slots now stack to deliver one extremely devastating punch instead of serving as a storage system for 3 separate power punches. But the controls aren't completely steeped in tradition. Players can plug in the nunchuck and guide Mac with their own punches. This isn't a wild-armed slugfest like Wii Sports Boxing. Precise defense and offense is still important, thanks to liberal use of the analog stick on the nunchuck. The Wii doesn't have much chance to get confused by complex motions. Overall, we prefer the classic method, but the motion controls provide a fun extra challenge similar to the wheel steering in Mario Kart Wii. The major question is, who is on the roster? Of the 13 fighters who main career mode, we were able to talk about 6 of them. Glass Joe, Von Kaiser, Disco Kid, King Hippo, Bear Hugger, and Don Flamenco. All we can say about the remaining fighters is that the fans of the classics will not be disappointed. The career mode may not have as many total fights as the NES game, but there are absolutely no repeated opponents. Mac begins in the minor circuit of a rundown gym wearing his traditional black and green ensemble. After earning his title, he'll switch to a blue outfit and battle inside a fancy stadium in the major circuit. Mac's costume constantly changes throughout his career and the top secret mode afterward. I like that they're only allowed to talk about 6 of the boxers, saving the others as a surprise. To be fair, not disappointed in who they ended up picking, but I wish there were more originals. I probably already talked about this in my review of Punch-Out for the Wii, so let's just move on before I completely rehash that video. Something I think is fun to look at is the early secret section at the bottom, which gives new players tips on some secrets in the game, if you don't understand what those 2 words mean. Just some things like, alternatively tap the 1 and 2 buttons, or drum the remote and nunchuck, to regain health after knocking an opponent down. Or, hit the minus button between rounds for a one-time health boost. You'll know it went through when Doc starts eating a chocolate bar. And, lose 100 times to earn the shameful yet invulnerable training helmet. It really just harkens back to even older magazines that talk about secrets and little strategies in games. Man, I really wish I was born a little earlier to experience more of this stuff, because this scene is super interesting to me. Of course, the screenshots of the game are cool, but there's not really much to talk about here. It's all pretty standard, kind of grainy. Finally, we have the 5th and 6th pages, which have the most content of all, I think. We've got profiles on Little Mac and 6 boxers from the game. First, let's finish the main article with the second half of it on the right side of the page. As the variety of screenshots convey, Punch-Out's presentation is faithful to the classic while adding a new layer of detail. For example, Don Flamenco's Rose Dance and Von Kaiser's Telling Headshake are still present, but now characters will develop bruises, lose teeth, and earn some bandages. Their faces telegraph emotions outside of anger as well. King Hippo is sympathetically sad as you relentlessly punch his shorts down, and Glass Joe's eyes grow wide with terror as your slow-mo star punch arcs towards his face. The camera even zooms in slightly to provide a better view when you're dishing out a particularly good beating. On the other hand, if you're on the receiving end of a beatdown, a handy practice mode helps you learn the tactics of the fighter giving you problems. Doc takes you to a gym where you'll box a blue hologram version of your rival. Mac wears a training helmet in this mode, so he doesn't take any damage and is free to memorize patterns and test out star-earning techniques. Exhibition mode allows rematches with any boxer you've already defeated. As an added bonus, 3 custom challenges for each opponent help keep things interesting. Glass Joe's challenges require you to knock him out 3 times and then let him win by decision, find the one-punch knockdown weak spot, and win the fight without dodging, ducking, or blocking a punch. Once you've completed the challenges for a given fighter, you'll unlock his custom audio pack, which includes a song and voice samples. The real reward, however, is that most of these objectives line up with a character's biggest weaknesses, so you'll automatically learn the best tactics along the way. While we can't give details about Punch-Out's multiplayer component, we can say that it is completely offline. In fact, the game has no online features at all. We were initially dismayed that it wasn't at least some kind of leaderboard for KO time, but most boxers have some kind of timing-based, predetermined vulnerability that would have led to everyone in the top 100 having the identical time. There are plenty of fighters and a couple of gameplay modes that must remain a secret at this point, so keep an eye out for a full review in the coming months. Now let's go over the boxers really quick. I know a lot of this is probably obvious stuff, but I think it's really fun to read how they were thinking and feeling about it in '09. Little Mac, the perennial underdog. Little Mac always overcomes the odds to take down opponents 5 times his size. He may not have much to say, but his chocolate-loving trainer Doc Lewis talks enough for the both of them, with full voice acting. Doc is still adjusting to living in 2009, as evidenced when he advises Mac to join the Club Nintendo today, Mac. Glass Joe. Glass Joe, aside from the Goomba, is quite possibly the weakest character in all of video games. He leaves obvious holes in his defense that you can just constantly pound through without waiting for him to punch first. Now that Punch-Out has voice work, players can finally hear Joe's heavy French accent with such phrases as Bonjour and Vive la France. Disco Kid. Disco Kid is the only new character we encountered, and his eccentricity totally lives up to the rest of the cast. This vain boxer is more concerned with dancing and looking in the mirror than beating people up. He sways back and forth with the music and strikes various poses throughout the match, always warning you about his hooks with a polite "here it comes." Whenever he does a disco point, a brief sparkle glistens off his teeth, signaling that it's punching time. Von Kaiser. Anyone who has to shake his head before punching is probably a little wired, but the latest version of Von Kaiser is completely unhinged. Partway through a fight, he'll cower and call for his mommy, and between rounds he'll rock back and forth on his stool while his ruffled up mustache looks like an abandoned bird's nest. Bear Hugger. This woodsy Canadian loves eating raw fish and chugging maple syrup. Fans will recognize him from Super Punch-Out on the SNES. This burly dude is more concerned with showing you his raspberry face than dishing out punches at first, but after you send a few star punches his way, he'll call you a hoser and unleash his patented bear hug. Once he's got his confidence back, he'll taunt you with a provocative hip swivel that shows off his jiggly belly physics. Ugh. King Hippo. The ruler of Hippo Island doesn't have to tell anyone how much he weighs. This guy's voice sounds more Tyrannosaurus Rex than human, and his very step shakes your Wii remote. Hippo's classic belly weakness is still intact, except this time he's got a new pincer double punch in his arsenal. He'll still stay down after hitting the canvas once, and there's apparently a secret way to knock his crown off during the fight. Don Flamenco. Don loves the smell of a rose and a nice spritz of perfume before getting in the ring. His strategy involves taunting you into punching and then countering with a maraca shake uppercut. Don's nastiest attack comes after he backs up and claps uno, dos, tres, and unleashes a triple hook combo followed by an uppercut. To really stick it to him, you can punch off his toupee. Watch out, this makes him very angry. It's a really interesting article, and I'm glad one of my favorite games ever got a big stage in one of them big fancy magazines. There's so much cool stuff here. I love the way it looks. I love the way they talk about these characters. I love Punch-Out, so obviously I'm gonna love this. Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy with it. That's just me, though. Now, originally, this was the end of the video, but oh shit! I was curious if there was anything else Punch-Out related in the depths of my purchase from the estate sale, since there's quite a few issues from 2009 in the bundle I bought, and it turns out there were a few more cool things regarding the game in these pages. All it took was like half an hour of searching through all of them. They ended up talking about Punch-Out for the Wii in multiple 2009 issues of Game Informer. One in May, June, July, and then all the way in October. Well, there might be more in that gap between July and October, but I didn't find any other mentions of the game from my haul of the estate sale. The first thing I want to discuss is from the very last one I have, an article from 2009, a Q&A with 3 people, Kensuke Tanabe, who was a manager for the production of the game, Bryce Holiday, a producer at Next Level Games, and Ken Yeloy, game designer for Next Level Games. In this article, 10 questions from the Game Informer forums were asked to these 3, and I thought it would be fun to include it after the main meat and potatoes of the video. Were there any second thoughts about adding the same boxers with the same weaknesses? I know it's a remake of a classic game, but doesn't it seem that the game will be a bit repetitive? This was intentional, but I don't think it ends up being repetitive, and here's why. The first 13 fights all have elements of the original fights. They generally have the same weaknesses, and that was a specific nod to the original. But we incorporated some new moves within those fights to make them feel updated. We didn't want exact carbon copies of the original fights. The next 13 fights, title defense, are about the boxers evolving and learning something from their first experience. For example, Glass Joe has headgear to protect his fragile jaw. Those fights are completely new, and our intent was to evolve each character's story. Nintendo and Next Level Games agreed that we had to answer to traditional fans of the series. To that end, the NES game came up as the best option of choosing fighters, but once we started choosing them, we found that we couldn't cut anyone, and we ended up maintaining all the fighters of the NES game. So our strategy was to include a limited number of improved fighters from the original version rather than creating a bunch of new boxers. Since we allow players to take on these returning characters with new moves in title defense mode, we felt that this is where the experienced players would find the sense of freshness that they craved. I wouldn't have hated there being an extra circuit that had swapped around fighters with slightly faster attacks or something like that, but what they ended up going with worked out really good. Next question. Why not allow for players to control others besides Little Mac in multiplayer? I was hoping to put a beatdown on my friends with Glass Joe, or even worse, Disco Kid. We actually did consider that feature, but it never worked out well enough for us to feel comfortable including it in the final game. We decided that focusing on Little Mac, with the addition of Giga Mac, helps to make our multiplayer mode a fresh new addition to the series. I actually brought up this concern in my video about a Punch-Out Switch port. I agree with Yeloy's sentiment, but I think with a little time they probably didn't have, it could have been an awesome addition. Was there ever consideration given to implementing Motion Plus controls? We discussed it, but we found that the Wii Motion Plus controls weren't necessary. Since our game is not a traditional boxing simulation, we did not feel that the additional accuracy provided by Wii Motion Plus would enhance the overall experience for the player. No real comment on this one, it's about as straightforward as it could be, though a more realistic Punch-Out game that tracks your punches accurately would be interesting. Why was Mr. Sandman promoted to final boss status over Super Macho Man or Mr. Dream? Sandman was promoted to the final boss mostly due to the nature of his persona as compared to Super Macho Man. We wanted the end guy to be fearsome rather than funny, so we pushed Sandman further into the villain category and made it feel like he could beat any of the other boxers. They made the right call on this one. I feel like Sandman into Super Macho Man would have been much more anticlimactic than what they went with. Sometimes the game is so difficult I want to throw my Wii remote across the room. On a system that has so many casual games, what made you decide to make this so hard? Yes, but you keep picking it up afterwards to play again, don't you? I do the same thing. In our minds, hearing people say that means we were successful. Our goal was to create enough of a challenge to satisfy the experienced fans, but at the same time have something that the casual users could get into easily. That's not an easy feat to accomplish. With 27 fights, we were able to tune the game so the first 13 fights would be accessible to the casual user, and the title defense mode would be satisfying to the experienced user. Any experienced gamer today started their career as a casual player, right? When a casual user encountered a great immersive title, he or she started to transform into an experienced gamer. I would be pleased if Punch-Out could offer similar encounters for casual players on Wii. That's a very healthy philosophy for difficulty in games, in my opinion. I'm glad it was tougher than the average Wii game. Was it hard to modernize Little Mac or any of the other boxers for this generation? We've got really great creative artists here, and being fans of the original, it seemed like they just knew what the characters had to look like. Little Mac probably took the longest to approve the final look, but he's the hero, so you gotta make sure he gets the most attention. A very interesting answer to this question, due to how little of Little Mac you actually see during the main gameplay segments. He's even at half opacity to put more focus on the opponents for the majority of the game. Did you guys have even the slightest consideration of including Mike Tyson, bringing back memories of the days of old? You know, before Mike Tyson ate people's ears? He didn't really match the direction and feel of the game we're recreating. No comments there. It makes a lot of sense looking at where Mike Tyson was at the time. Why were there only 2 new characters in the game, Disco Kid and Donkey Kong? We came up with some ideas for characters in early stages of development, but then the title defense mode evolved as the core piece of the game for fans of the original game. Since we knew we would have 2 unique versions for each character, that meant a lot of new characters and lesser-known older ones were cut from the production list. On top of that, we knew early on that we essentially wanted to deepen the experience for fans with characters they already loved by creating new puzzles, dialogue, and idiosyncrasies. In the early stages of development, we made a decision to focus on returning fighters. Disco Kid was an exception. He showed the potential to have some outstanding characteristics, so Nintendo and Next Level Games agreed to add him. As for Donkey Kong, he was suggested by an executive at Nintendo of America when we were considering adding a special character. When he was suggested, we all agreed he was a great fit. We hope that longtime Punch-Out fans were surprised when they learned he was in the game. Thinking about the 13 boxers as 2 fights each, I can explain why they skimped out on more original characters. Still a shame there was only a single new guy though, excluding Donkey Kong of course. Why did you change Piston Honda's name to Hondo? Capcom doesn't have any problems using the name E-Honda. I think it's safer to stay clear of company trademarks. Additionally, his name Hondo in kanji represents the main hall of a traditionalist Buddhist temple. I think it adds to another layer of Japanese-ness to his character. Please welcome him as Hondo from now on. I see a lot of discourse about this one for some reason. It's not really a big deal. His name is just Hondo now. Nobody's hurt, yeah? Can we expect a timely sequel, or will we have to wait another decade? Oh, hopefully we won't have to wait that long. The more requests for a sequel we receive, the more we have to seriously consider it. Personally, I would like to consider making a different type of game than we have created so far that utilizes the characters of Punch-Out in a new way. This one is, well, yeah, ironic. Although that last sentence does intrigue me a little bit. I have to wonder what he meant by that. But yeah, that's a very fun series of questions, from fans of Punch-Out to the actual people that made the game, like answering them. I think that's really fun. The second thing was just fairly small. It was just a little poster on the last page of the July issue. It's cute. I put it on my wall. And finally, the last segment of this video, where they made a review for the game. It was another interesting read that I thought was perfect to end this video on. Punch-Out. A punch you'll love to take. I've dreamed about a new Punch-Out ever since the Super Nintendo. The N64 and GameCube came and went without even a boxing-related rumor. 3 consoles later, Nintendo finally caved and hired the development house from Mario Strikers to reinvent this beloved franchise. So many things could have gone horribly wrong, but the core single-player experience gets everything right. Every boxer from the original Punch-Out on NES is here except Mike Tyson. And the original high punch, low punch, dodge, block, and duck moveset is still in place. As you progress through the roster of rivals, the difficulty ramps up at an even pace. Okay, Glass Joe is still tremendously easy. You can cruise through the first few fights, but things start to get tricky in the major circuit. The good news is an effective practice mode allows you to take on a hologram version of the boxer currently giving you trouble. The pre-match cutscenes and comical fight animations add dimension to the boxers and manage to steer clear of stereotypes for the most part. You learn that Glass Joe likes to wear black turtlenecks out of the ring, Bear Hugger trains with real bears, and King Hippo's diet consists of mostly meat and tropical fruit. After you defeat every opponent, it gets even better. New cutscenes in the second career show how they've dealt with defeat at your hands and what they're planning for revenge. These guys must have trained well, because the second career is incredibly difficult. Using the motion controls, players swing the remote and nunchuck to punch and use the analog stick for defensive maneuvers. These controls hold up during the first round of bouts, but you're better off using the NES control scheme in the challenging second career. Balance board control is also an option, but it isn't accurate enough for the careful timing required in Punch-Out. Sometimes I would lean right and Mac would dodge left. You just can't risk that kind of imprecision in a fight. At any time, you can schedule an exhibition fight with any previously defeated character to attempt 3 achievement-style challenges. I loved trying to KO guys in under a minute or discovering their one-hit kill, but the only reward is a lame set of audio files. Okay, rude. Multiplayer finally comes to Punch-Out in the form of split-screen Mac vs. Mac battles. Wildly flailing your arms like a Wii Sports boxing reject won't work here. Fights are more about timing and predicting opponents' moves like in a traditional game of rock, paper, scissors. Skilled players can fill up a blue gauge and transform into a hulking Gigamac capable of crushing blows. While it's amusing to unleash this kind of power on your friend, the multiplayer doesn't have the legs to keep it interesting. This could have been the chance to finally play as enemy characters or to take the franchise online somehow, but it ends up feeling like the team settled for the easiest route. Despite these complaints, the single player has always been the focus of Punch-Out, and Next Level delivers. What better way to show your buddy up than to totally annihilate the boxer that just KO'd him? I played the original Punch-Out until I could pull off the moves in my sleep. Wii Punch-Out is similar to the NES, but if you think that nothing can top that classic, then you're underestimating this game. Punch-Out relies on decades-old gameplay, even in its career format, and yet remains engaging, demonstrating that you are not served by memories of the good old days alone. Hats off to developer Next Level for keeping the gameplay so tight that even when you've memorized everyone's attack patterns, the game still demands the skill and timing to win. The lack of more features, despite the fun multiplayer, keeps this title from being a new classic, but my memories of it are already superseding those from the NES Punch-Out. I would add some more to that review, but it's pretty in-depth, and I already kind of cut out some parts of it. That's a whole damn page. I don't need to get redundant in this already redundant video. That concludes this look back into Gaming Magazine's thoughts on one of my favorite games. This video ended up being more extensive and detailed than I was intending. This originally was just going to be the first 6-page exclusive, but I thought it fitting to include the other stuff I found. That way I don't have to make more Punch-Out article stuff in the future. No more Punch-Out guy comments for me, but Punch-Out will come back. It always does. Any glomp, that's going to be all I've got for today's video. So I would absolutely love it if you could stay a moment while my secretary Bonnie shows you some art, and I talk about some of my other ventures that might interest you. Goose's Golden Gallery, that's my second channel. I post my music, art, outtakes, memes, and basically anything that's not long form over there. The link's going to be in the description, alongside my TikTok, Blue Sky, and Newgrounds. I post art and occasionally funny things. Worst case scenario, you don't follow me, in that case I'll become a sandbag, so no biggie. I also have a Discord server, the Honk House. That's where me, my friends, and all my viewers hang out and talk, share art, argue in general chat, spam the Punch-Out channel, and have game nights and watch parties and stuff. It's great! Also, hey, become a headliner. That's what I call channel members. You get access to stuff like emotes on streams, first dibs on watching new videos, votes to decide on the priority of specific videos, a private channel in the Discord server, your name, and a little doodle of you in the credits of videos. To get that doodle, though, you'll have to join the Discord server to let me know how you'd like me to draw your head. Finally, if you have any art of me you'd like to share, tag me in it on social media or post it in the channel of my Discord server and I'll put it at the end of my videos. With credit, of course. Okay, that's everything from me today. My name is Goose. I thank you very much for watching. And, don't forget to put the trash out on the curb. Tomorrow's trash day and you don't want that garbage piling up. Okay, bye!